let's go ahead and bring in the panel. You may be familiar with some of them. Hello. Hello, everyone. All right.
Hey,
we want to go ahead and get started and let everybody introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Zainab, and we'll just work our way around.
Hey, guys. I'm Zaina Day. I've done some shameful politics in the past, like was press director for AOC and wrote her speeches and helped get her elected. Don't hold that against me. No, we really believed we were doing something back then. And I'm a contributor to Status Quo News. I have my own Substack called Bullhorn Bulletin, and elections, third party, and that kind of stuff has been my life's work. So I think that about sums it up.
Thank you, Zainab. Jason Call.
Hi, Sabby. Hi, friends on the panel. Jason Call, longtime activist, 35 years in progressive organizing, former campaign manager for the Jill Stein campaign, and current campaign manager for Butch Ware for California governor campaign. Very happy to be here. And I also was a huge Bernie acolyte in 2016, a little bit less so in 2020. But yeah, time to put that stuff behind us.
All right, Ron Paclone.
What's up, everybody? Sabby, good to see you. Everybody, good to see you. My name is Ron Placone. I'm a comedian and writer and filmmaker. I have a movie out now called Left at Wall. You can get it in a lot of places where you get your movies. Apple TV, YouTube movies, you can get it right here. I'll also be performing in San Diego, April 4th and 5th, and Seattle, Washington, May 23rd. I like, among other things, cats, music, and unions. I dislike, among other things, war, corruption, and capitalism. And also, I'll give a quick shout out. I know that he's not here, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Jay Buffont. I know he got some encouraging news recently on the health front, and I know he's a friend and colleague of yours and RBN and everything. So if he's watching, really happy to hear it. It made my day, and we're rooting for you.
Thank you so much, Ron. JB will be glad to hear that. And Jason.
Hello, everyone. Last but not least, Sab, good to see you again, and nice to meet all of the new panelists. So yeah, my name is Jason Chikuma. I'm a law student, also here in the Boston, Massachusetts area. I'm also a political commentator, where I like to dissect some of the biggest stories from a progressive angle and really think about how the sort of multiple crises that we see going on domestically and abroad can actually be a really good opportunity to rethink the way we do progressive politics. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Substack. My handle across everything is Truth is Speaking. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
All right. So welcome, everyone. We have gathered here tonight to discuss this AOC Bernie Sanders oligarchy tour and possibly a path forward. And what does that look like? I want to get started with this clip here. Again, shout out to the awesome, wonderful Case Study QB for this.
Bernie is back. Hey, Mr. Trump, people fought and died to create a democratic society. You're not going to take it away from us. 83-year-old independent Senator Bernie Sanders is drawing crowds even bigger than he did as a presidential candidate.
Feeling the burn?
Yeah. For the past month, Sanders has taken his fight against President Donald Trump on the road. He's billing it the Fighting Oligarchy Tour. We will not allow America to become an oligarchy. In Denver, the anti-Trump sentiment was strong.
Oh, I think it's a disaster. And he talks about he has a mandate. He never had a mandate.
But so was the frustration with Democrats.
How's the Democratic Party doing challenging this? They got to be a little tougher.
But being a bunch of doormats. So it feels like we're left stranded when everything feels like it's crumbling.
Tour's Western swing, Sanders was joined by New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
He has handed the keys of the federal government to Elon Musk.
We can stop it there. You guys are familiar with what's going on here. So AOC and Bernie Sanders have started this oligarchy tour as a response to Donald Trump winning the presidency, and also Elon Musk kind of just acting like a madman and making executive decisions. It seems like it's President Elon Musk instead of President Trump. I think we're all familiar with what is really going on. But the thing I want to ask everybody tonight, people seem to be torn on this particular tour. There are some people that said this is just going to go right back into the Democratic Party. There are others who applaud what they're doing, but I've even had people ask me, what's the next step after this? Like they're going to those rallies and they're just like, okay, so what are they asking us to do? And I'm curious to hear how all of you feel about the oligarchy tour first and foremost, and if you think this is the right way to go for next steps. I'm going to start with you, Zainab, since I know that you worked with Justice Democrats, so you are very familiar with AOC.
Well, I have mixed feelings about it because I think that there's a potentiality that people can be sheep herded back into the Democratic Party that we see happening over and over again without any real reforms happening, and then people selling out like some of my candidates did and having that kind of problem. But on top of that, I'm also excited to see people talking about boycotts and strikes, which was part of the messaging, how things need to get done now. And even Bernie talking about people running independent. I am disappointed he didn't mention running third party, but in my state, there is no third party and you can't have one unless you run a presidential election and you get 20%. So as much as I'd want to run green or something there, the fact is you can run independent now in states like that where we don't have it established yet, not have to wait. So mixed bag on this. Good message. Don't want people sheep herded back into the Dems unconditionally. I'm already seeing some milquetoast candidates coming on pretending to be cosplay revolutionary. I've interviewed like 700 candidates, when we were endorsing them, and there's red flags going up about the, opportunists coming out already. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. So, it's a mixed bag for me.
That's what I've been hearing from a lot of people. Jason, you were a part of the, worker strike back / Green Party collaboration where they actually had announced that they were doing this fight back against the rich tour. How do you feel about this? Some people are saying that this is splitting the left because, believe it or not, a lot of people who are voting for the Green Party are left because the Green Party does have a left platform. How do you feel about people who are saying that they're splitting the left by this and they're not collaborating together? For example, Bernie Sanders and AOC should be, in my opinion, I think they should be collaborating with Jill Stein and Shama Sawant, and all of them should be fighting back against the oligarchy together. But there is that split. How do you feel about that?
Well, this is where the skepticism comes from, is if they are not willing to highlight people who have been working on the outside of the duopoly for a long time and say that these people have had the right ideas, they're simply not to be trusted. And I'm with Zaina on the mixed bag in terms of, I think it's really good that a lot of people are very pissed off in this moment because they absolutely should be. But if they are simply directing all of that energy against Trump, like the lady who commented, will the Democrats need to stop being doormat. Wake up. That's the function of the Democrats, is to be the doormat. They are literally there to everything that Trump is doing. The way to it has been paved by the Democratic Party for the last 45 years. So Democrats and Republicans are both capitalist parties. You can't have a revolution with a counter-revolutionary party, which is what the Democratic Party is. So, and the other thing I wanted to comment on is some of the video that AOC has put out there it's just pathetic. I don't even think she buys her own shtick anymore. That's how sad it's coming off. But they should be turning these voters who are very pissed off about Trump need to recognize that both major parties are working hand in glove with each other. There's token resistance, and then there's overt fascism, covert fascism versus overt fascism. All in all, it's all fascism. What are the Democrats doing about students at Tufts, for instance, getting pulled? And I know you're going to do the segment later, getting pulled right off the street in broad daylight. What are they doing about it? Nothing. Why? Because they paved the way for that to happen.
All right. Ron, how do you feel about this? All of us come from the Bernie movement. Like, just FYI for anyone that's new that's watching, all of us come from that particular movement. But Ron, I know like you had a show during the time that Bernie was running. How do you feel about this Fight Back the Oligarchy tour at this point?
So I am more than encouraged than not, but I'm encouraged because of what I am paying attention to. So what excites me about the whole thing is the fact that thousands of people in all over the country and in red states and in rural areas even, they're coming out against the oligarchy. Like that's kind of the premise of the whole thing. It's kind of fighting the oligarchy. That to me is incredibly encouraging. And then I kind of look around online and also in my personal life that there's people I know who are more, left of liberal, but not quite where I'm at, if that makes sense. And even 4 years ago, they wouldn't say the United States is an oligarchy. And 4 years ago, and especially 8 years ago, they would say things to me like, come on, Rod, now's not the time. Now's not the time. Well, now a lot of those people are saying this stuff that we've been saying 4 years ago and 8 years ago. They are tired of the Democratic Party. They are seeing that it's not an opposition party at all. That's a freaking good thing. The fact that just kind of regular people who maybe don't pay a ton of attention to politics because they're working 2 and 3 jobs just to survive are saying, yes, we do live in an oligarchy. Yes, the Democratic Party is not in opposition. That's a good thing. What we can't do is we can't expect AOC or Bernie or any other politician to lead the movement that is necessary for what happens next. It never works that way in American politics. It probably never will. What we really need is massive amounts of mutual aid. And you look at, Chris Smalls, you look at Sean Fain. We need those types of people in every industry. Every type of workforce needs to have a leader like that. And then you need some massive mutual aid. And that's how change actually happens. But the fact that there has been this mass awakening is a good thing.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I just spoke to Chris Smalls. Recently, we had him on RBN, and he is going across the country trying to organize people for a general strike. Like Chris Smalls is still organizing. So just FYI for those who are wondering. Jason, how do you feel about all this?
No, I would echo what everyone else has already said, particularly Ron, talking about this being a moment of awakening. I think that is positive. But what I am worried about, I mean, there are a lot of different places where this movement, if you can call it that AOC and Bernie are trying to start, is fraught with danger. But what I'm worried about is the term oligarchy becoming just another part of our partisan political landscape where people associate oligarchy only with Donald Trump and the Republicans. Mm-hmm. I don't see the fact that America has been an oligarchy for quite a while before Donald Trump got on the scene. If anything, literally my first YouTube video that I made, which coincided with Trump's inauguration, was basically talking about how the Trump administration is almost like the logical endpoint of this incredibly predatory version of capitalism, which often borders on fascism, and unsurprisingly ended up just going full on fascist in the end of it, right? It's not that we didn't have an oligarchy before in the United States. The thing that is scary about the Trump movement in particular is that you are taking the concentration of economic power and combining it with like a shrewdly authoritarian political movement that isn't afraid to bend and break any rules, any laws, any customs in the service of like this really narrow elite of people that it serves. So all the energy and the momentum that is coming out of this movement, if people just think that the problem of oligarchy is going to go away once the Democrats get back in charge, then the opportunity to build something genuinely new, something lasting that can take us beyond the current uniparty that we have would have really been lost. And that's one of my main fears. I have more to say about AOC and Bernie in particular, but at a high level, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I kind of feel I kind of agree with all of you guys that is my concern. I'm concerned that people are just thinking that the billionaire problem is on the Republican side and not that it's a problem on the Democrat side as well. Because I think if this tour would have been launched under Biden administration, I think people might feel a little bit differently, right? Like maybe if AOC and Bernie had launched this oligarchy tour when Biden was president, I think more people would have been like, oh, wow, Democratic Party is taking this corporate money too. The Democratic Party is also corrupt. But it seems like to me, the fight only seems to come out when Donald Trump is president. Just like when Donald Trump won in 2016, don't forget, that's where Justice Democrats came from. It was birthed from how in the world did we get Donald Trump as president? So it seems like the fight comes out when the Republicans are in charge. And that brings me to this clip here. When Bernie Sanders was questioned about AOC running for Chuck Schumer's seat. Listen to this.
Back when I first came to the Congress and the House, I helped form the Progressive Caucus. We had 5 people at that time. Now they got close to 100. So you got a whole lot of good people. Alexandria is extraordinary. I am so impressed by her work in Congress and she inspires young people all over the country.
Would you like to see her joining the Senate?
Right now we have, as I said, just a whole lot of people in the Congress. Okay, Jonathan, thanks.
Wait, I got one more. This is important.
Well, I asked you.
Okay.
You want to do nonsense, do nonsense.
No.
I don't want to talk about inside the Beltway stuff. I got 32,000 people.
I was just asking you about AOC because she was out there with you.
No, fine, but I don't want to talk about this. What was the last question?
I was just going to ask you one more question about you. I mean, that's all. I was literally your last.
What is your question?
Well, I mean, it's easier to understand. I mean, I want to ask you about your future. This is the biggest crowd. You said you ran for president twice. This is the biggest crowd you've ever seen. Are we going to see you run again? Or what's your future?
No, right now, I am very proud that the people of the state of Vermont sent me back to the Senate with 63% of the vote. Right now, I'm Vermont senator. That's what I do, and I'm very happy to do it. I am 83 years of age, and I'm tired.
So that part right there, right? So Bernie Sanders wanting to exit the moment he was asked about maybe AOC challenging Chuck Schumer, or actually anybody challenging a Chuck Schumer, someone to the left of him. And this idea that, Chuck Schumer, many think that he needs to step down. It seems like when the criticism comes towards individual Democrats in Congress, he doesn't want to speak out against that. Like, he spoke out about the issues with Kamala's campaign after Kamala lost. But during that time, that was a moment where he really could have said, like, this is not a working class agenda. Like, this campaign is not gonna get you across the finish line. But he does seem a lot hesitant to criticize individual Democrats. And that's what bothers some people. A lot of people saw this and they said, well, how are you fighting back against the oligarchy if you can't even be willing to stand up to someone like a Chuck Schumer? And Zainab, I pass it back to you. There seems to be this hesitancy, and some people are saying that this is now the left Tea Party that we've been looking for. But the Tea Party, which was a part of the Republican, came from the Republican side, the Tea Party fought back against their own members of their own party. That's right. And it seems like Bernie doesn't want to do that. Zainab.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I didn't initially think of it that way, and it's probably my politics brain, because I always hated when I was trying to organize something else, like when I was trying to organize Abolish ICE or Medicare for All, and they wanted to ask me like legacy politics bullshit when I was trying to do the actual policy. You know what I mean? I'm like, we're not talking about, who's going to challenge who right now. We're not talking about who's going to be president in 2028. I'm worried about what is happening right now. All these people dying without health care. Let's talk about that. But that's a really good point you make, because did he get up because it was just that, or did he get up because he didn't really want to talk about challenging Schumer? I didn't think about it that way, but I think you're right. I call it situational courage. They have situational courage right now. They only got this courage when a Democrat's in office, or when a Republican's in office. When a Democrat's in office, they're out here endorsing Biden. They're out here endorsing, his fascistic policies that he had before this. They're not really standing up to bills that are coming across that are criminalizing pro-Palestinian protesters. Like Jasmine Crockett's a great example. She voted in favor of arming Israel. She voted in favor of censoring pro-Palestinian students, and people are like, she's so revolutionary and edgy. And I'm like, she's so revolutionary that she voted in favor of genocide and oligarchy and apartheid? Like, really? And that's what I think of when I think of this tour right now, is situational courage. It's like the pink pussy hat wearers that came out, Resistance 2.0 and the white pantsuits and, the first presidential address, that Trump made and all of that. I hated that stuff. It went nowhere. The first women's march went nowhere. We still had Roe versus Wade taken away. And then no one's mentioning the point that 70% of seats went uncontested. 70% of seats went uncontested down ballot this year. There was no damn challenge in states. These red states aren't even red. There's just no choice on the ballot. But they're not talking about that opportunity. They're not actually talking about running people in the next election. They're talking about 2028, or I am glad they're talking about strikes and boycotts right now. But it doesn't seem to be, there's not a full call to action with this. And like you said, there's not the proper criticism of the party. They're not criticizing them for talking about the good billionaires. They're not out there giving Jeffries down the road. They're not talking about Gaza and Palestine. Not really. I'm not seeing the things that are, I didn't see a whole lot of policy in their speeches either. Did you guys? Because I didn't. I'm excited about this, but I want them talking about Medicare for all. I want them talking about the things that we need to be talking about and actually speaking out against fascism. And like Jason made a really good point, Truth is Speaking made a really good point about the word oligarchy. I don't want that branded like other words where it becomes meaningless anymore.
That's a really good point. Well, that's what people are saying, that some of the people are saying, like, okay, you're having these rallies, but what are you asking us to do? Is the ask just to tell us to come out and support the Democratic Party, which I think we all can assume, and I'll pass it to you, Jason Call. We all can assume, we know how the DNC works, right? Like they've blocked Bernie, like they've gone after Bernie like twice. They're going to want who the donors want to be the nominee. So this is why I think many of us, some of us that come from that Bernie movement have been very hesitant, because some of us see this and we're like, we already know what's going to happen, that when that corporate Democrat is selected by the DNC to be the nominee, that you guys are going to tell us you support them. I pass it to Jason Call.
Well, let's just look at what happened on a congressional level in the last election. Two of the most progressive, and I use that word again, the word progressive means almost nothing anymore. And as far as the word oligarchy, we've had an oligarchy for decades. Bernie was speaking about it. In 2016, he was identifying the word oligarchy. So, but you know, they bounced Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman out of office on AIPAC money, and nobody said boo about it. Nobody said boo about it. The Progressive Caucus is an absolute joke. You've got dozens of members in there that are crossover members with the New Democrat Coalition, which is it's literally the Koch brothers coalition in the Democrats, because when that coalition was formed 20 odd years ago, the Koch brothers wanted a faction within the Democratic Party that would be purely for their business interests. So a progressive, Bernie being proud of the Progressive Caucus, like, 2/3 are complete garbage. They're fully loaded up on corporate money. They're fully loaded up on AIPAC money. They're not the resistance is not coming through the Democratic Party. It's not coming through the Progressive Caucus. I really think that what a standout moment would be in terms of names is for somebody like Cory Bush to say, hey, I'm joining the left, like I'm officially leaving the Democratic Party. This Democratic Party is trash. Or somebody like Rashida Tlaib, who you know, ostensibly in the next election, if she was to run, like, I'm going to hold my seat because my district likes me, but I'm not going to do it as a Democrat because the Democrats genocided my people for 15 months. You know, those are the revolutionary things that need to happen within the Democratic Party. They're not going to happen. You saw the interview with Jamal Bowman on Bree Joy's show. Absolutely pathetic, and more concerned about people, you know, calling him out than actually doing the work for the people. That's the state of the Progressive Caucus right now. So, and Bernie himself can't say the word genocide. People ask him on the street, Bernie, what are you going to do to help people in Palestine? And he yells at them. You know, how is that any different than Medea Benjamin being in the halls of Congress and asking Republicans, will you, you know, stop arming Israel? And they ignore her and yell at her. There's no difference, no difference at all. I don't see Bernie anymore. And I'm sad to say it. Because you know, God knows how much money I donated to him and all the time I put into his efforts over his two runs in 16 and 20. But he has absolutely lost the thread. Again, good thing happening, as we've all identified, that people are waking up to how trash our government is. The question is then, what are you going to do about it? Any resistance, any real resistance, and where we need to go is not going to happen within the Democratic Party. That interview with Bernie should tell you a lot. Now, I had not seen that before, and you probably saw me laughing the whole way through it. I was like, oh my God, Bernie, you have completely lost the thread here. You're going to get mad at somebody asking a question, a legitimate question. Should AOC run for Chuck Schumer's seat? And he doesn't even want to answer that. It's over. It's over. Good. Bring people out to the rallies. Let the left take over from there. We need some voices on the left to really stand up and I don't want to use the word herd or corral in a disrespectful way, but we got to get these people moved in the right direction, and it's not happening with Bernie and AOC.
Ron, what do you think about all of this? What do you think about Bernie's reaction there?
So that is my first time seeing that clip. And yeah, as far as to kind of just piggyback on what everyone said, was he just upset because being asked about Chuck Schumer, even though I don't believe, did the reporter actually use those words, or did he just leave it as vague as should AOC run for Senate? And it was implied.
Should she run for Senate? But it was implied because
it was
he's already
implied.
asked the question.
Yeah. So I mean, Bernie has always been soft on his colleagues, and that's always been frustrating. I mean, I still, whenever I see it, I think of moments in the debate where he was basically catching Joe Biden in a lie, and he would multiple times be like, "Are you sure, Joe?" And we were all screaming at the television. Good times. So yeah, I mean, that's been frustrating, forever, and they're all that way. They're always soft on their colleagues. The other side of it, though, this guy is a corporate journalist. I'm not even the ABC guy. This guy is a corporate journalist. There's a media theorist named Todd Gitlin who a long time ago laid out the way corporate journalists in the United States treat movements. They trivialize it, they marginalize it, and then they antagonize it. That is what they do. They started doing it in Nam probably before. They did it to Occupy Wall Street. They did it to the George Floyd protests. They do it to everything. That is always how it's been. So now you have thousands of people coming out in regards to the oligarchy, and this corporate journalist just wants to get some soundbite of political insider baseball gossip. So I kind of get from that angle, I kind of get where Bernie's coming from. And I'm certainly not going to side with this corporate journalist. Was that Bernie's motivation or wasn't it? I don't know. I'm not inside the guy's head. But I see that side of it, too. Getting big picture with all this, here is a truth that I hope we all realize. We being the left, people who want actual progressive change, real progressive change. By the way, I've said for a long time, the only metric of getting into the Congressional Progressive Caucus is if you have progressive car insurance. I stand by that. It's my theory. I'm sticking to it. But having blabbered all that, we need more people. We just do. Our numbers are way too freaking small. And so you really got to let people evolve. I know that nobody here, myself included, was a leftist when they were born. I was not reading Noam Chomsky in the crib. Maybe someone here was. I sure as hell wasn't. I don't think any of us were. We all had our moments. For me, it was the Iraq War. And you know what? It took me a while to fully evolve. First, I just thought, Bush wants to continue the war and Kerry wants to stop it. It certainly wasn't that simple, but in my head it was. But you know what I did? I kept reading more. I kept learning more. And eventually I realized what the war machine in the United States was all about. And I never looked back. So yeah, I take everyone's point that, we don't want people to just associate oligarchy with Trump. Abso-freaking-lutely. But you know what? Give people the space to evolve. They're getting there now. Hey, we live in an oligarchy and Trump's really amping it up to 11. So, it's up to all of us to kind of push people in a direction. And hey, by the way, this didn't start with Trump and it's not going to end with him either, because here's the big freaking picture, and give people the space to freaking evolve that way. So that's why I think big picture, I'm really hopeful and cautiously hopeful. Hopeful as in, the burden is on all of our backs, all of us, the collective we, because I really want to see a true movement. The left as a whole has been losing for 100 years in the United States. 100 frickin' years. That's a long time. And I am so sick of losing.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too. A lot of people, we haven't had wins on the national level. We've had wins on the state level, but not on the national level. I'm passionate.
Yeah, there's little wins. I don't mean like literally we've lost every single moment of every single thing, but collectively, yeah, you get it.
Yeah. I'm going to come to you now, Jason. That's something else I was going to add as well, Ron. Like one of the things Roger Meadows, kind of a friend of the show, Roger, kind of got me to understand, and it took some time, is that he said people aren't always going to be where you are when you're there, and that you have to learn how to give people some grace and like that kind of stuff. So Roger did like, he got that through my brain after telling me this for like about a year. Jason, what's your take on this?
Oh yeah, I've had so many thoughts listening to everyone speak. First of all, Zainab, the DNC should pay you for coining that term, situational courage. Like, we're not cowards; we are just situationally courageous. I'm like, wow, that is some A+ political consulting work right over there. But it's a good segue we're talking about. And thinking about what it's going to take for Democrats to win. I have a lot of thoughts, not just about the Bernie interview and the Chuck Schumer question, but I think the general point that I would make here is that as much as we criticize Republicans, there's a lot that not just Democrats, but like the broadly speaking left political movement in America could learn from them, because they, more than anyone else in this country, know what it takes to build the sort of coalitions that are required to actually seize and maintain political power and use it to actually push their agendas through. So what do I mean by that? So like, first, I do agree with the interpretation of that interview that Bernie had, that he was showing, once again, for reasons that are still inexplicable to me, his deference to the establishment Democratic Party that has personally screwed him so many times, right? The one things that the Republicans showed in the creation of both the Tea Party and Donald Trump's primary run in 2015, 2016, was that when the Republicans decided they needed to change their party, and yes, they ended up changing it into something that I think we all disapprove of morally and politically, they weren't asking the insiders in their party for permission. They weren't cozying up to them at dinners and trying to get invited to the White House Christmas party and all this other sort of stuff. They took a confrontational attitude. Like, we don't care if you don't like us. We don't care if you don't talk to us. We are going to take over the leadership of this party, whether you like it or not. And that sort of fighting spirit was what drew a lot of people to figures like Bernie and AOC in the first place. So watching them over the course of time, like slowly back away from the things that drew so many supporters to them is like both disheartening for the party and also disillusioning for an entire political generation that has watched one after another basically had to fall out of love with their like political icons on the left, because they've seen all the compromises that they've made with an establishment that is clearly beyond saving itself, much less the country. Like the one thing that I had hoped before the election, in the event that Trump won, was that I'm like, okay, well, now after the party that had spent a decade telling us, these are the most important elections of our lives, we have to rally and organize against Trump, after losing 2 out of 3 elections to him, the third of which they only won because of COVID, and even then it was a really close election. I thought that would hopefully be the final like nail in the coffin of the DNC establishment politics as usual, that would pave the way for something new. But just seeing how tightly they have their hands like gripped to the centers of power in that party, it made me realize that, oh wow, the fight that it's going to take to retake control of this party, if that's even something that can be done, it's beyond what any nationally prominent political organizers or leaders on the left are willing to do. That is something the Republicans have already done now twice, basically in the last decade in their own party, in order to transform it into the sort of thing that would be a conduit and a vehicle for their sort of political transformation. The other thing that I would say, and it's a related point on why a genuinely confrontational left Tea Party movement, whatever form it takes, one of the things that is coming out of the political moment that we are in, another thing that Republicans do really well, is that you have a unique opportunity for coalition building on the left. A lot of the people that are usually at each other's throats, like progressives and leftists and liberals, at the Chuck Schumer, particularly when Chuck Schumer refused to shut down the government a couple of weeks ago, it was actually really interesting being online and just being in left spaces, seeing across the entire spectrum of left thinking, from like some of the more moderate voices to even the most like revolutionary leftist voices. Everyone was coming to the conclusion that like, if we keep following this establishment, they're going to get us all killed. Basically, we now have to starting to think about radical actions that will need to be taken within the party in order to unseat the leaders who really have no sense of direction for the party. But in this time, you need to have leaders, like what the Republicans are able to do in these in these situations is they put together, they don't need every element of their coalition to agree on everything. It's actually pretty incredible, the sort of coalitions they build across. You can take religious conservatives and libertarians and neoconservatives and okay, we can disagree on basically half of our, most fundamental beliefs, but how about we just get into power first? And then once we do that, we can debate amongst ourselves what is the best way to divide this pie between us. The problem is we usually on the left start dividing the pie before we've actually won anything. So we're on the outside looking in. That's why the rallies were sad, man. I'm watching, they're like, we got 30,000 people in Colorado. Trump's like, that's cute. I'm abolishing the Constitution tomorrow with an executive order. But I'm glad you guys are rallying. Keep wearing those pussy hats and bring those signs to my speeches and whatnot. It's like we are way, way, way beyond the symbolic political gesturing game. And we have a unique opportunity where we can build that sort of consensus amongst everybody who generally views themselves as left of center. It's maybe you don't think of yourself as a leftist. Maybe you call yourself a liberal, a progressive, or no label at all. I think now is the time to look for the areas of overlap. Where people say, listen, we can disagree on the finer points once we stem the damage that's being done and actually get into power. But let's actually get into power first and start reversing some of this damage.
Really interesting.
I was going to say, can I follow on to that for just a second? Because that is what Workers Strike Back and the Green Party are trying to do under Sharma's leadership. And Sharma is, I've said for years that she's the most important politician in the country because of the ability to clearly articulate what we're going after and then mobilize people to achieve those goals. So I would say, and Jason, I absolutely loved everything. I've never heard you before, but you are absolutely on fire here, and I'm going to start finding out where I can listen to you more. So thank you. But I think there's got to be sort of ground rules of you got to be anti-capitalist. If somebody starts talking about reforming capitalism, I don't want anything to do with them. Capitalism is over. We got to move beyond capitalism. If somebody starts talking about, well, this movement has to happen within the Democratic Party because the left is not strong enough outside the Democratic Party, I don't want to hear it. The Democratic Party, as somebody who has run for Congress, has seen what the Democratic Party does to people who try to challenge power from the inside, they're not going to let it happen. And so we have to be very clear that the movement has to be built outside the duopoly. The capitalist duopoly is simply a no-go. So if we can sort of set those here's barrier to entry for coalition building, then we can argue about the details. Now, I agree with you that we start arguing about these little details. I got some people within the Green Party who are mad at me because I identify as a Marxist-Leninist. I'm like, what does it matter at this point? What does it matter? Let's work on getting the power that we need to have. So from that perspective, I think you're absolutely right. And you see in social media spaces a lot that you've got DSA sniping at PSL, sniping at the Green Party, sniping at other left independents. Stop all of this. Anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-genocide outside the Democratic Party. Let's build that together.
So let me bring this up because here's one of the things that people are noticing as well. So far, all of these areas that they've gone to, we're noticing there seems to be something, I don't know, kind of similar about the crowds. And I noticed this in 2016, also in 2020. And I feel that Bernie has not learned this lesson yet. And I want to bring in this clip here. Again, shout out to Case Study QB. Bernie has a problem here. And again, I don't think Bernie is running for president again. I'm just talking about in particular with this oligarchy tour. There is a community that seems to be forgotten. And if it were me and I was in that situation, I would have gone to obviously the Black community first, because the Democratic Party cannot win without the Black vote. That's why Kamala Harris lost. So listen to what this gentleman said here.
Okay, let's have a conversation. But 5 years ago this month, I interviewed Dr. Ivory Thigpen. He's the senior pastor of a church in Columbia, South Carolina. And he was Bernie's 2020 South Carolina co-chair. And he talked about how Bernie really underestimated the Black vote.
Yep.
And one of the big mistakes was that he did not go to the anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And the failure of courting the Black vote, right? Well, Bernie did well with Black folks under 30. Sadly, that isn't a very large turnout number.
Right.
especially during the primaries. But black voters over 30, he didn't do that well. I want to play a brief clip of my discussion that I had with Dr. Ivory Thigpen 5 years ago. And I think that if they want to break through, they should listen to what this guy was saying, working with the Bernie Sanders campaign, saying it out of love. But the way he was speaking, listen to this.
I think South Carolina as a whole, looking back, was a miscalculation. And of course, we have the benefit of hindsight, and we hope that the lessons learned from hindsight lead to foresight. That's one of the reasons I was willing to give my comments. I think there was an underestimation of, the black vote and the influence that the black vote would have as being a bellwether moving forward. So I do think, and it was a question I asked early on in the campaign to uppers. Nobody really never gave me a direct answer, and I don't even know if they had one, but I kept asking the question, were we really trying to win the state? Were we trying to be competitive? Or were we simply trying to do better than we did last time in 2016? Which I think was indicative of a lot of the decisions that were made, or calculations, shall we say. And I know that no campaign is perfect and nobody can predict everything, but there should have been, spider sensors going off, bells and alarms, whistles, red flags raised to know the importance of that type of event, or even South Carolina, the state as a whole, as it relates to African Americans.
And he went on to, of course, explain the Jim Clyburn angle and how.
Okay. And so, obviously, you guys know what happened in South Carolina, right? Like Bernie was winning all these states, and then he got to South Carolina and he lost. And yes, Jim Clyburn's endorsement of Joe Biden was a big part of that, right? But Bernie didn't ask Jim Clyburn for an endorsement either. But I don't think Jim Clyburn would have endorsed Bernie Sanders. That being said, that's not the only reason he lost. As someone who lived in South Carolina, people have to know it's one of the oldest electorates. There are a lot of black people that live in South Carolina. Bernie lost because he lost the black vote. And so what I see happening with this oligarchy tour, I'm looking at these places that they're going to: Denver, Omaha, Nebraska. And I guess the plan was to go to districts that Biden won in 2020, but I guess Trump was able to swing this time around or whatever. But I would say, why are you not focusing on the black community, knowing that the Democratic Party cannot win without the black vote? I will also add to that, considering that Kamala Harris did not go to Dearborn, Michigan, and Jason, I know you were there. Why in the world are you not in Dearborn, Michigan, right? Because it's not like the Democratic Party still needs to win Michigan. And you can't win Michigan without the Detroit area and the Detroit suburbs. You just can't. So again, you have to remember the population. To me, it's just very weird. It's like, so what I have heard from black people is that they feel like, once again, Bernie Sanders is prioritizing the white working class. I want to go to you, Zainab, on that.
Definitely, man. I saw they're not going to marginalized communities. If I was organizing this tour, I'd have started in Flint, and then I would have gone to Appalachia, and then I would have gone to somewhere like South Carolina, maybe some of these places that have been hit by these storms and floods. And yeah, I'd have gone down to Alabama, Louisiana. Alabama was blue until 17 years ago.
Yep.
So, all these states were blue until the abandonment of the 50 state strategy. They disinvested. The Democratic Party strategically divested in black communities and poor Appalachian communities. Specifically, they targeted our areas because this is where the home of the workers' movement lived, was in these communities, really. And they stopped pouring money into us because they didn't have any money to get back from us. We couldn't donate billions to their campaigns. So their strategy was, focus on wealthy blue areas, mostly white suburbs, to help keep their party afloat. So yeah, I agree with that. I also think that, one of the problems I see with this is, again, us putting our eggs in the basket with the damn hero, a person, as being the identity of a movement instead of a policy. Like, AOC and Bernie are like the face of something. And I get the word oligarchy, just like Jason was mentioning earlier about that word. You're right. So, like, where's the policy, though? And I know Bernie still talks about some of the old policy, but the movement should be led with a policy, not necessarily a leader or a person, because every damn time we put our eggs in the basket in the movement with a person, especially, we're not seeing any more MLKs or Malcolm X. or Fred Hamptons. We ain't got those right now. We got the Bernies, we got the AOCs, the faces we have of this movement. The reason that those leaders were amazing was because, like a W.B. Du Bois was talking about policy. The policy was front and center. What they want to change was front and center. That was the message. And that's not what we're seeing. So we're not seeing the message coming into the most impacted, most marginalized communities in this country. And we're not seeing the economic message. And we're not seeing this movement being led by policy that they want to change.
Really good point. Lack of demands as well. That's why people are asking, like, okay, we went to this rally. What do we do now? Right. Jason Call.
Well, Zane is absolutely right. We just had 4 years. I mean, why did Biden lose this election? Okay, so you put the genocide right up on top because people weren't having it anymore, and he absolutely lost the Muslim vote. But he also, the Biden administration, the Democrats, did nothing for people over 4 years. They really didn't. I mean, can you imagine coming out of COVID when people were screaming for, can I have some stimulus checks? You want us to stay at home? Give me some money because I got to pay my rent. Give me some health care. I can't afford to, I can't afford to go to the doctor when my kids are sick. And of course, this hurts, as Zane was saying, it hurts rural communities and marginalized communities the most. What were the Democrats doing over 4 years of the Biden administration to actually help improve people's material conditions? And the answer was next to nothing. And the Democratic stalwarts want to trot out a couple of things that they might have gotten passed. And look, that wasn't nothing. But did you seriously improve people's conditions? No, you improved the conditions of the billionaire class, and most people continue to suffer over 4 years. And then you capped off your administration by slaughtering hundreds of thousands of innocent people. So the Democrats could have won this election. We were screaming at them for a year. Stop killing people in other countries. And they would not do it. And we told them months and months and months leading up to the election, stop killing people and you might have a chance to win. And throughout November 5th, they just kept on with the same policies. Meanwhile, people are going, why are we bombing people in other countries while I can't afford to feed my kids and we got 43 million people still in student debt? These are basic, go back to Bill Clinton, who said it's the economy, stupid, right? But he wasn't wrong about that. It's the economy, stupid. And people, too many people in this country are struggling, and the mask came off during the Biden administration. Now, that defaulted to Trump, but it wasn't Trump winning so much as it was the Democrats losing. And the numbers really bear that out with the people who stayed home in the election. And here's the thing, the Democrats are not going to figure this out on purpose. And that's why we have to be outside the Democratic Party.
Ron, what's your take on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think those criticisms raised in the segment are absolutely valid, and we see this playbook over and over again in the Democratic Party in various ways. I mean, we see it in Bernie not hitting South Carolina the way he needed to. We see it in Hillary Clinton didn't go to Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. Kamala Harris with Michigan. You see it over and over and over again. And what's really going on here? Well, at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is basically just a giant fundraising machine that fundraises off the idea that, hey, we're not these really, really terrible people that we beat maybe half the time because we live in, as Gore Vidal put it, the United States of amnesia. The Republicans are pretty brutal, so you take a chance on the Democrats again. They do absolutely nothing, so you take a chance on the Republicans again. Rinse and repeat. It's this volley of neoliberalism and neo-fascism. We're the ping pong ball getting batted back and forth. Here's the problem, though. No one's actually trying to win the volley. They're just happy to bat it back and forth. So it's a huge freaking problem. I think also, side note, to revisit something from a little earlier, I think we need to get away from the Tea Party analogies, because here's the deal. The Tea Party was a Koch-funded wet dream. They had money and they had power. We don't have that. We don't have that at all. And that the DNC is set up so that a progressive takeover isn't really possible. So yeah, these thousands of people, which is an encouraging thing, we need to move them into effective areas. What are effective areas? Mutual aid, running for city council, joining a policy-oriented group, joining an activist group in your community, getting involved. I mean, hell, even just volunteering at an animal shelter. I mean, start as small as you frickin' need to, but kind of get out there, go to a protest, go on strike. This is what needs to happen, you know. And so when we talk about leadership, it is a balancing act, right? Because no leadership whatsoever, well, you just got, it's like herding squirrels. You're not going to get anywhere. But if you focus on leadership and deities, well, then you're just going to get led astray too. So what you need is you kind of need a balance of both. And when I think of leaders, I think of the Lucy Parsons, I think of the Emma Goldmans, I think of the Eugene Debs, I think of Malcolm X, I think of MLK. Those are leaders. And, you know, you can go back to the last time we had a transformational moment in this country, which was arguably the New Deal. Was FDR a leader? Not in the movement sense, not at all. In the electoral sense, yeah, he was a president, but he was not a movement leader. He just had foresight. The leaders were the socialists, the communists, the anarchists, the union leaders, the working class who were out there with their pitchforks. And FDR pointed to his rich friends and said, see them out there? You're going to give up something or you're going to give up everything. You frickin' choose. And that's how we got a New Deal. So that's the type of leadership we frickin' need.
That's right. Jason, what's your take on all of this?
Well, I wanted to double down on the diversity problem that Bernie seems to be having, because I think there are implications in that will determine how we are able to spread an effective left-wing message for the broader electorate of this country. So the first thing I would say is that I think the elephant in the room about why Bernie is not going to Black cities or communities is that I think that is just reflective of a broader complacent attitude that the Democratic Party has. And make no mistake, Bernie and AOC are doing this tour as representatives for the Democratic Party. They are subtly trying to sell the party's brand. But it's this sort of condescending attitude they have towards Black voters that they just think that their votes are sort of in the bag already. So like, why are we going to focus on trying to like double down on getting like an infinitesimal more extra percentage, like a marginal percentage more of like the Black vote, when we have to like, you know, re-win, you know, white men without college degrees that are in Nebraska and all of these, you know, states in the middle of the country. So they don't really think that they have to do a lot of outreach. And I don't think they could have an analysis that is more profoundly mistaken, particularly when it comes to, I'm going to focus on the Black community in particular, because I know that one a little bit better, but I think this is true among other immigrant and minority populations in the United States. But and this explains why part of why Bernie was unable to carry South Carolina and a lot of the southern states because of their large Black electorates in the 2020 primaries, because a lot of those marginal communities, despite being the people that would benefit the most from more left-wing economic policies, have some of the highest degrees of skepticism towards anything that is labeled like politically or economically radical. And this is a disconnect that has been true throughout centuries of American history. Like you go back to the early 20th century, and other than the NAACP, I don't think there was any other organization of a national scale. I'll put some labor unions. Actually, no, I'm not going to put the labor unions because they were deeply racist for a very long time in American history. But the Communist Party of the United States, they were out front in the 1910s, 1920s against lynching, against segregation, having Black leaders in their organizations, taking up international Black causes and linking them to Black subjugation in the United States. They went over and above out of their way to try and get Black people to see that, you know, they had a lot to gain from more left-wing politics, but Black involvement in any sort of radical leftist politics at that point was shockingly low, much lower than what they had expected. And obviously the dynamics aren't exactly the same today. And there is a lot of misinformation about what is genuinely economically and politically radical. Like most of the things that Bernie became famous for promoting, as we all know, are pretty common in every other advanced democracy. But because of how far right the center of the American political spectrum is in this country, they can be labeled as and seen as radical. It's going to take a lot of outreach and a lot of work to, in a non-condescending way, educate and inform groups that might have misunderstandings about what they have to gain from these policies and what these policies exactly are, especially as Ron and, we've talked about it in different contexts, the massive, well-financed disinformation machine that is being promulgated by the right wing in this country. It's going to take so much extra effort to try and give people proper information about what their political options are, what their alternatives are, and what the substance of these programs and that we're trying to put in front of them are, and how they can actually benefit from them. So I think the Democrats make at their own peril, a really terrible strategic mistake, thinking that all they have to do is have a couple rallies with a lot of the college, white, educated liberals that already agree with them, and take no extra effort to actually think about where are the disconnects happening with our messaging. Because right now they think that Trump and his gang of billionaires are better representatives of the working class than the literal party of FDR. So we need to be thinking about that. And I think if you're not thinking about how you solve that for Black populations, as you said, the Democrats did really underperform, not just with the Black vote, but with a ton of minority votes in this election. And if you just keep ignoring that and just assume that, because of the color of their skin, they're kind of going to be in the bag for us, we don't have to spend that much time thinking about how do we actually communicate to these people. Let's just focus on Meemaw and Peepaw or whatever that is. I think they're going to continue to lose not just elections, but I think popular support.
I agree with everything that was said. I think everybody brought really good points to the table. And one thing that I want to add just to wrap it up is that I think that there are, I guess I don't want to call them the couch voters, but the people who stayed home. These people stayed home for a reason. And I think that what is happening is that, to Jason's point and to some of the points you guys made, the people who are coming out are the people who most likely voted anyway. So it's like, in order to undo what was done, you really have to reach the people who stayed at home. And there was a good portion of Black Americans that stayed home. The Democratic Party has continued to lose the Black vote since Obama 2012. It has continued to decline. I've watched this over the years. And you can't win without that, right? So there's that. You lost more of the Latino vote. There's an issue there. You lost young voters. So there's an issue with that as well. But the people who stayed home for a reason. And it's really interesting to me. I'm glad that people are pumped up to fight back against corporate greed and billionaires and all that. I do worry, though, that people have this conception that this is only an issue with the Republican Party and not also with the Democratic Party. And I also worry that the communities that should have been touched first, like to Zainab's point, Flint, big one, easy. That's easy, right? They are being ignored once again. So it's just, there's a number of things here. It's like, if you go to a city like Denver, obviously, there's only going to be a certain segment of the population there. I know, I already looked at the demographics. So it's kind of easy, right? And I also think that all of us that came from that Bernie movement, I think that the crowd sizes made me believe something was going to happen that did not happen. When Super Tuesday came in Massachusetts, I was shocked that Joe Biden won Massachusetts, because I didn't see any Biden signs. I saw a lot of Bernie signs, but that said something to me. It really made me think that okay, all those people I saw at the rallies that were with me, did all of that transfer into votes? And if it did, where did all the Biden support and stuff come from? So again, it's I think someone mentioned it on the panel earlier tonight that we're a small segment of the population. I think those of us who are the leftists are a small segment of the population. And even though a lot of people will say they want Medicare for all, does it transfer into votes? And that's another thing I'm noticing, is that people are not coming out. They did not come out during those primaries heavily to make that known. So I think that the big consensus I think I'm sensing from the panel is that there should be focus on these communities that have been ignored, a lot of these marginalized communities, poor communities, and that also, to Ron's point, we should be pushing people into areas where they can do something on their own and not put hope in one person, which is what I see happening with people again, whether it's that's pushing people towards mutual aid or city council. City council controls the budget, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Kind of a big deal. City council, organizing, like that type of thing. I'm going to be starting mutual aid workshops in April to teach people how to do mutual aid in their cities. And mutual aid is something that is needed. And I don't think a lot of people realize that just going to vote for someone, doesn't help people when they go on strike. When people go on strike, they have to have mutual aid. When people are struggling to pay for groceries, they need mutual aid. Like, there are a lot of things, ways that we can help each other within the community. And I think that just hoping that one person is going to be your hero, I don't think that's the answer. I don't believe that anybody is a hero. So that's the one thing that I do worry about. But I think it's good that people are upset, right, with the billionaires. I want everyone to give a exit remark. Ron, let me start with you because I know you have a hard out.
I have a set. Yeah, it's still early here on the West Coast, and I do have a set where I need to trek across Los Angeles, but I'm not going too far. I to kind of just echo on what you said and give some closing thoughts here. I do believe that now is the time for movements. Now is the time for strikes. Now is the time for protests. Now is the time to think very much out of the electoral box. Or if electoralism is your lane, that's fine too. We need everything, but let's be strategic about it. Let's go after those school boards. Let's go after those city councils. Let's go after those mayorship positions, because really, federally, we don't really have much in our corner right now, and that's by design. And to really change it, that requires changing the rules. It requires getting money out of politics. It requires getting ranked choice voting all across the country. It requires, starting at the grassroots level. So I am cautiously optimistic that that's the direction we're going to go in, because we really have no choice at this point. We are undergoing a coup where they're replacing something bad with something even worse. And the big scale of things, that's what is going on right now. So you kind of realize, well, the one thing we can all take away from what's happening right now is how fragile this flawed, rugged neoliberal experiment is. And if you can replace it with something worse, well, guess what? You can replace it with something better too. That's also a possibility. Not right now, but slowly but surely, that's a possibility too. So it was awesome having conversation with all you. Jason, you're new to me. It's good to meet you. Good to know you. And the rest of you I know already, so no surprises. But no, you're all awesome. And I will reiterate, hey, I go around, I do shows. If you're in San Diego, April 4th and 5th, I'll be there. Seattle, I'll be there May 23rd. Jason, I'm hoping I see you in some of the Seattle Greens there. And I do have a movie out. If you like movies that call out the Wall Street machine under a nice story about family, that's a fun indie comedy, check out my movie. It's called Left at Wall. You can get it all kinds of places: Apple TV, YouTube Movies, Google Play, Xbox. Just Left at Wall, type it in on your smart TV, you'll get it. And thank you so much for having me. Good to see everybody.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Likewise, Ron.
Jason Call, there's something you wanted to plug?
Yeah, okay, so I am campaign manager for Butch Ware, a radical black Muslim who is running for governor of California, and we are having a live stream this Saturday, the 29th. It's at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be having Jen Perelman, who ran for Congress in Florida's 24th, I think it was, against Debbie Wasserman Schultz a couple of times. Guy Christensen, my favorite guy, TikToker, is going to be with us. And to follow along with what Ron was saying, we're going to be joined by Gabe Medina, who's on the Monterey, California school board. And Omaha, Nebraska has Anthony Rogers Wright, who is a Green Party member. He's black, he's a socialist, and he is running for Omaha City Council, and his primary is on the 1st, which I believe is next Tuesday. So if you're in the Omaha area and you want to help out Anthony Rogers Wright, please do. I do want to say this about Omaha. I was just there earlier in the week visiting with Anthony. They have started socialist teach-ins, socialist classes, a series of 6 classes there, and they maxed out their room their very first class, like at capacity. So there is hope in some of these red areas. Nebraska is very, very red, but there is hope, and there's a wide lane for us to grow this movement. Solidarity is important outside the duopoly. I would ask the left to stop punching at each other and start organizing together. But please join the live stream, butchwareforgov.org, and hope to see you there. Sabby, been fantastic. Thank you. Zaina, great to see you again. And Jason, awesome to meet you. I think you're amazing.
Nice.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Zainab, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, just a couple of things. You guys can check out, I've got some pieces coming out. I actually have a piece on what we were kind of discussing today in response to what it's going to take to run Indy, the history of the 50-state strategy. I talk about like state ballot access and things like that a lot of people kind of don't know about when it comes to running for office. I also have we have this huge project coming up with Lila and Pat from Punch Up Pod. And we are going to be doing a 10-part series on the techno-monarchy and those creeps like Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel. But we're going to be talking about the Democratic Party's new branding too. Their whole new abundance as recline strategy is just repackaged techno-monarchy. So we're going to be covering all of that kind of stuff in a big 10-part series. And in August, so you guys can go to bullhornbulletin.com, follow me there, Status Quo News, Zainab Day on Twitter. In August, I'm going to start doing candidate trainings for just about anyone that wants to come for free. So I'll be putting out free videos and things like that on my on Bullhorn Bulletin and videos. I'm super excited about it. I wanted to do it before. And then I got all like electoral sucks. I'm going to do other kinds of organizing. But I feel like there's an opportunity to take local offices and things like that. And there's not a lot of material out there on organizing and training people to do it. So I'm hoping I can throw in some ways I can help. And it'll be for free. And yeah.
All right. Thank you, Zainab.
Jason, it was so nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Jason, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I'd say the main thing is my YouTube, Truth is Speaking. I release new videos every week. I actually have a couple that will be coming out probably next week. I'm particularly dealing with the sort of attacks Trump has been making on the judiciary, the courts, the rule of law. I think there are a lot of things that a lot of people don't know about just exactly how fragile our system is and just how much Trump and his allies in Congress, how much power they have to basically totally upend the rule of law if they chose to do so, like make it impossible for courts, including the Supreme Court, to review executive orders, not hear any sort of cases on any sort of constitutional issues, including free speech or due process. There are all these things that I'm trying to educate people on, sort of dipping into my legal background and my general political commentary. So Truth is Speaking, my YouTube, please check it out. Also follow me on Twitter. It's the same handle. And my only closing thoughts that I would say, echoing the other Jason, is yes, we gotta close ranks on the left. There will be a time to hash out all of our many policy differences. That time will come. It's an important conversation we need to have, but right now we have to stop the coup and all the bad things that this current administration is trying to do. And thank you, Sab, for having me on again.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to be speaking at Harvard Law School. I don't think I got a chance to tell you that. First week of April. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be there. I'll follow up with you on the details for that, but that'll be awesome.
All righty. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.